there was going to be a sparring match agreement that we'll spar for a while. I wasn't sure. I was honest about it. That's why he said it's going to go rounds. I wasn't sure if there was an understanding that, we'll play a little bit and then we'll get a little more and, whatever. So that was part of it.
Acknowledge Jake has had double jaw surgery, 4 plates, 8 screws in his face, and everybody is just kind of breezing past that like it's no big deal. But I'm looking further into this because that's no easy surgery, and I'm starting to ask the question, is this the beginning of the end of Jake Paul's boxing career?
As his brother, I was just shocked. I'm in the hospital with the guy, and he's like, yo, can you make this TikTok? Can you film this for me? He's like laughing and having a good time.
He doesn't have any agenda against Anthony Joshua because it feels...
Before this fight ever took place, I completely refused to believe that something like this could be scripted in any way. I was firm on that. But now the entire boxing world has absolutely exploded into chaos. We're talking about a full-blown meltdown, with people going as far as saying Anthony Joshua should be arrested for what he did to Jake Paul inside the ring. Yes, arrested, that's how serious the reaction has become. Experts across the sport are furious with AJ, and the reason is clear. Jake suffered severe, devastating injuries that no one was prepared for. His jaw was fractured so badly that it required surgery, with screws inserted to hold everything together. This wasn't just a routine boxing injury, it was serious medical trauma. The backlash has been relentless, with critics calling the fight a complete mismatch from the very beginning, arguing that Joshua's power and aggression crossed a dangerous line for this type of bout. Fans and professionals alike were left in total shock by the level of damage inflicted on Jake, and now massive debates are erupting everywhere about fighter safety, proper matchmaking in high-profile fights, and whether this contest should have ever been sanctioned in the first place.
Stay away from the power. You could call it running, and you'll be right. You can also say it's smart for a guy of Jake's size and understanding that AJ is a fucking monster. It's also smart to fight that way. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing. It was not the most...
Analysts Brian Campbell and Shaquille Majwi sat down to provide an incredibly detailed breakdown of Jake Paul's recent fight against Anthony Joshua. Diving deep into both the physical and mental toll the bout took on him, they focused on how Joshua's overwhelming power caused serious, brutal damage, including blows so severe that Jake ultimately had to undergo full jaw surgery afterward. To cope in the ring, Paul relied heavily on constant mobility and evasive maneuvers, circling relentlessly and doing everything possible to avoid being trapped against the ropes, where Joshua could unleash his full force. While this defensive style wasn't flashy or aggressive, it allowed Paul to survive far longer than most expected against such an elite opponent. Campbell and Majwi highlighted how his focus on movement and ring awareness helped preserve stamina and mitigate some damage. Yet even with those tactics, Joshua's sheer strength still inflicted visible, severe injuries. The analysts emphasized that Paul's approach showcased the crucial role of defensive planning at the highest level of boxing, while also underscoring the massive risks fighters face when matched against opponents of such overwhelming power in high-stakes situations.
For him, in terms of what he's doing in the boxing ring.
Listen, so long as people will tune in and so long as Jake Paul is paid by Netflix or any broadcaster to air his fights, we're going to see this continue. And Jake Paul knows his business model, right? Now, this deviated, this AJ fight, which came together kind of last minute after the Tank Davis fight fell apart. But we know Jake Paul's MO here. It's find the most popular guy with the most physical disadvantages for me to fight. And Jake Paul has the benefit that he's turned himself into a villain, or in the pro wrestling circles, a heel. People tune in to watch. We did not tune into this fight to see competitive boxing. Most of us tuned in because we thought, here's Anthony Joshua. Here's a 2-time unified heavyweight champion, a guy who physically just overwhelms Jake Paul. And we're finally going to get what Tyron Woodley and Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz were not physically fit, whether it be through their size, experience, or age, to do, and that is knock out Jake Paul. And so, because I don't really feel like we got that satisfying comeuppance that a lot of people have been waiting for, it kind of gives Jake Paul a little bit of mystique, I'd almost say, to still try and string this along. Now, I don't know in terms, he says he wants to be cruiserweight champion. I'm not quite sure what the competitive road there is, because let's make no mistake, the reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because Jake Paul focused exclusively on being elusive. He did his best, and kudos to him, right? He did a great job of not getting cornered. He was always on the gas until the gas sort of fell out from underneath him. And so I don't quite know, short of leveraging his popularity, how he's going to get to that title shot if he's not actually going to fight, like really fight an elite boxer. But if he's looking to make money, there's the KSI fight out there, there's the Tommy Fury rematch, there is way.
Former UFC champion Michael Bisping reacted strongly to Jake Paul's crushing defeat against Anthony Joshua, and he didn't hold back. He described the fight as an absolute masterclass in professional boxing, a performance that clearly showcased the difference in levels within the sport. Bisping emphasized how completely outmatched Paul was from start to finish, highlighting the precision, power, and devastating combinations behind every one of Joshua's punches, including those brutal uppercuts that left Paul with almost no room to move or breathe. These attacks exposed glaring weaknesses in Paul's defense and overall strategy, weaknesses that simply couldn't withstand an elite-level opponent. Bisping specifically pointed out the broken jaw and repeated punishment Paul endured, noting that these weren't just unlucky shots. They were the natural consequence of facing a bigger, stronger, and far more skilled fighter, something Paul had never experienced before. He also remarked that all of Paul's bravado, press conferences, and hype couldn't prepare him for the technical and physical realities of fighting an elite heavyweight. While Paul did survive all the rounds and made it to the final bell, the sheer damage in Joshua's complete domination highlighted the massive gap between professional elite fighters and celebrity crossover boxers still learning the sport. Bisping concluded that the fight served as a stark lesson in respect, preparation, and the importance of genuine skill development in boxing.
Has to pay, as you see here, a whopping $43 million. $43 million of his $92 million purse. That means Anthony Joshua was left with $49 million. Right? Now, he also has to pay, I believe, 10% of that to his promoter.
Dominic Engel delivered a brutally honest take on Jake Paul's broken jaw fight against Anthony Joshua, breaking down the strategy behind every moment in the ring. He explained that Paul's game plan was to avoid direct engagement rather than trade punches with Joshua, which made sense given the clear size and power difference. This defensive approach made it difficult for Joshua to corner him and land decisive finishing shots. Even when Paul took a serious right hook, a punch that would have dropped many fighters, he showed remarkable resilience and didn't visibly falter. Engel also pointed out an important nuance. Joshua wasn't fighting at full intensity throughout the bout. Given that this was just an 8-round fight against someone of Paul's experience, Joshua didn't need to exert maximum effort to control and dominate. Engel compared this to Tyson Fury's performance against Ngannou, noting that even elite fighters don't always perform at peak sharpness, often adjusting their effort based on the opponent's skill and threat level. He emphasized that fighters frequently rise or fall to the challenge presented in front of them. While Joshua's clean shots certainly hurt Paul at times, he managed to survive the fight without being in serious danger of a knockout, showcasing both his defensive awareness and the measured, controlled approach Joshua used throughout the bout.